What has been your biggest culture shocks in Korea?
Yeah, I don't know. So some of the things I'm a bit like, nah, not necessary, and it's maybe a bit too strict and maybe preventing like freedom a little bit. But
It's the same here as in Greece, where after you've been to the toilet, you throw the paper in the bin instead of inside the toilet. That's the biggest culture shock, I think. Like,
It was like 80 something degrees, 87 degrees.
I have a
Fahrenheit.
picture. I have a
It
picture.
was so hot, and it was so.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today, I ask people, what has been your biggest culture shock in Korea? Today's topic is like culture shocks. What has been your biggest culture shocks in Korea?
For lunch today, I was eating like a chicken soup, and they had like a whole chicken in the soup. I haven't used chopsticks a lot back in America, and I was struggling quite a bit to eat the soup. I'm used to seeing like smaller bits of chickens. Like it's weird seeing the whole animal right there. Like
whole animal.
the meat came off the bone very well, so it was a little easier to eat with chopsticks, but it was hard for me.
I think for me, it's the staring a lot because I know there's a lot of foreigners here already. So I thought when I came here, I wouldn't notice it, but people will stare a lot, especially the older people. They'll stare and like look at you, and if you see them, they'll still be looking, but younger people don't care. So
For me, it's the smoking culture. Like in the US, like people smoke cigarettes, but not as much. It's not that common, especially like inside the clubs or like the bars, like everywhere, especially during like in the middle of the day, like during lunch or something, you'll see a huge group of people from the office or something all just smoking together.
Really?
And that's like that was
Yeah.
really shocking to me. Also like how often they smoke. Like some of our friends will be hanging out with them for a couple hours and they'll smoke like 5 or like 6 or something in 2 hours or something, and I think that's crazy.
a bit much.
Yeah, it's really excessive.
Especially when they are drinking, like they smoke more often, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Anything else you want to share?
I would say the amount of couples that walk around. You don't notice at home, like in the U.S. Obviously there's couples, but you don't notice it as much as here. Like it's always something, and sometimes I feel like people are just in a couple just to say they're in a couple. Like so,
really?
yeah, that's what I feel like sometimes. Even like guys, they'll ask like, oh no, it's like hold your hand so quickly, like you just met them, and I'm just like, I don't know you like that. So yeah.
Like, do you have any experience? about
Yeah, a lot of people, they're more straightforward too here. So like, going out on a date, like usually I'll just like, if it's the first day, I'll just walk with you, that's it. But usually they want you to hold their arm or like hold their hand, and I'm just like, I need time to get comfortable with that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here's one. People spitting on the streets. It's so wild to see that. I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable, but I guess it's just different culture. Also, the buttons in the restaurants to call the
Yeah.
waiters, we don't have that. You just kind of like awkwardly look over and try to like call over a waiter. Here, I like that there's a button. It's very like convenient here.
Yeah.
First thing, yeah, everybody wears pants here, even though it's scorching hot and super humid. It doesn't make any sense.
I saw
I'd prefer
somebody-
to wear shorts, but
I saw somebody in like a winter jacket.
Really?
yeah, a winter
Yes.
jacket in the middle on like a sunny day too.
Yes.
It was like 80 something degrees, 87 degrees.
I have a
Fahrenheit.
picture. I have a
It
picture.
was so hot, and it was so. Another thing is driving around, like drivers. They don't seem to care about pedestrians as much
Oh,
as
yeah.
they would in the U.S. Like I've seen cars driving up on sidewalks, and those mopeds driving around on sidewalks, and like even down this thing, I've almost been hit a couple times just driving around.
They never wait.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They definitely just go on and expect you to get out of the way.
Yeah. One of the other things that I noticed is like the customer service is way better here. Like if they're not doing anything, they'll actually help you. We mistakenly went to a CrossFit gym instead of like a regular gym, like where we work out and stuff. Instead of like just turning us away, the man there, he helped us like find an actual gym, and like he called the place, and yeah, it was
Asked
very
for
nice.
Prices for us and everything. In
Yeah.
the U.S., they definitely would have just been like, oh.
Yeah, they've been like,
If you're not
"Bye."
gonna pay us, then you can go find this place on yourself. But this guy was really nice. He was super, and that's generally how it's been here. Everybody's super nice, even like in restaurants. And on the subject of consuming things, the food here in general
Oh,
is
it's
just
so good.
much better. Just on a regular basis, even just the
Yeah.
McDonald's is better than it would be in the U.S.
It's because the thing is like Seoul, like the rent here is like very expensive. So for a place to be like functional and like to be stay open, they have to increase the quality like a lot. So McDonald's here is way better. Outback here is way better. Like every single American place is way better here than it is in America.
I would say possibly like not the laws, but the culture of like following rules well and stuff. Like I noticed like in the metro, for example, like people line up and it's all very like civilized, and you know, you can plan the exits and everything, whereas like the metro and underground in England and stuff, it's completely chaotic. So it's like a lot more organized here, and like everyone tends to follow rules, if that makes sense. And there's a few like funny rules that I find like a bit strange, like the crossing the roads, for example, when the light's red. Or I've had a friend their photo was printed out because they put the bins out like at the wrong time or something like that. But like this is completely like crazy to me. I feel like that this is taken seriously, and just like the CCTV and stuff like this is quite new. But yeah, this has all been interesting.
But like, do you think it's good or bad? Because like maybe you could think this is too much, or they're too strict,
Yeah.
and there's no freedom or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in two minds, but I feel like for me personally, I almost feel like it's a bit too much, because some of the rules are a bit, like, I personally don't see what the point of the rules are. Like, I can understand it. I don't know, it helps the flow of society, but like some rules, yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's not necessarily a rule, but say, for example, being quiet on the metro or something like that. It's back home, if you're very drunk on a night out, like you make a lot of noise, but this is like fun, you know, a little bit. And some of the things I'm a bit like, not necessary, and it's maybe a bit too strict, and maybe preventing like freedom a little bit. But then again, it's like completely different, so I can appreciate that that's just not the norm here, and that's okay. Like that's fine for everyone here. So
I never seen a motorbike taxi in Korean, but Thailand
There are
there
many, like lots of motorcycle taxi. Yeah, but we never seen it here. They only have like for delivery. So also about the pide shower. In Thailand, we have lots of pide shower in toilet, because
Every bathroom?
yeah, every bathroom, every store, or even the public toilet. We also have that, but in here they don't have that much. They have like the machine pide like shower thing. They use like more tissue than the pide shower. Like when Korean driving, they are always like push the horn many times. But in Thailand, we do that too, but don't many
sometimes.
times. Yeah, sometimes. But in here, like like many times, so it's kind of noisy.
The first thing I can think of is it's the same here as in Greece, where after you've been to the toilet, you throw the paper in the bin instead of inside the toilet. That's the biggest culture shock, I think. Like, people are super nice here. I was kind of worried because the beauty standards here are very strict, I heard, but people are very nice. At one time I was taking my luggage outside to move hotels, and it was raining, and I had a luggage on each side of my body, and someone came with an umbrella over me and followed me all the way, which was very nice. I felt a little bit like burdensome, but they insisted, which was very nice. I don't think you would see that in Italy or Norway.